Tonight, a Hail Mary attempt to house asylum seekers.
We are very optimistic that tonight is going to be the first step in a many steps we are going to take.
A North York church starts up its own fundraising campaign to help build a new 500-bed shelter. Why tonight's kickoff is only a small step toward their $1.2 million goal.
Rob, by no means was a perfect human being, but he had a great heart.
And an overwhelming number of councillors agreed to rename a football stadium after Rob Ford. Why some councillors argued against giving the late mayor the honor right now.
I hope that one day I could be that person for someone else.
And coaching conundrum. A new report finds racialized people and women are underrepresented as coaches in Ontario. What else the report uncovered about a lack of training or standardized safety. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. Starting this Friday night at Dominion Church International, kicking off a new fundraising campaign. You'll likely remember the name of the church. We've covered it multiple times since June, when it started housing refugee claimants from Africa. Now, church leadership is aiming to open a 500-bed shelter. But as you'd imagine, it doesn't come cheap. At tonight's kickoff event, here's Tyler Cheese with our top story.
Tonight, members of Dominion Church International and the surrounding community in North York gathered for a holiday event.
A beautiful Christmas production. We have a play, of course, about Christmas, the birth of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and Christmas carols, right, to get us in the spirit of the season.
There were also performances from musicians while attendees enjoyed a meal. But this celebration isn't just about the holidays. It's also a fundraiser. The church is hoping to open a new shelter in the new year.
We are very optimistic that tonight is going to be the first step in a many steps we are going to take to raise money to build a 500-bed shelter. That's why we are here tonight.
Tonight's fundraising goal is around $20,000, which is only a portion of what they need to open the new shelter. But leadership here says that with the right funding, they could be up and running by February.
We are hoping really sooner rather than later. It's all about money. If the money is in place, we have a lot of resourceful people in terms of construction, in terms of brilliancy, architecture. We have all those people in our community.
He says all the money raised tonight will go toward purchasing a plot of land in Peterborough, but the full price tag is around $1.2 million. The need for a new shelter follows the church housing hundreds of asylum seekers since June. Upwards of 250 people a month have sought shelter here after arriving in Canada.
It was our joy as a church to take in people and take care of them, but that's not how it is supposed to be done. We were exploding on the seams, trying to keep in as many people as possible. So people need spaces, like designated spaces for people who leave the airport.
We cannot continue being in reaction mode all the time. We need a plan. So we are taking a step back to plan.
While Dominion focuses on a more sustainable plan, the City and Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada is helping to relocate those currently using the church for shelter. The church is also asking for the public's help. Interested donors are encouraged to reach out through Dominion's website. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
An update tonight to a tragic story out of Scarborough that led our coverage earlier in the week. A 25-year-old woman has been charged with murder in connection with the deaths of her two young sons this past weekend. Police responded to an apartment building in the area of Kennedy and Ellesmere around 7:30 on Sunday night. The children's mother was discovered on the ground outside the building. Police say she appeared to have jumped from the balcony. She suffered serious but non-life-threatening injuries and was able to direct police to the unit where her kids were then found. The boys, aged 5 and 4, were found without vital signs. They were taken to separate trauma centers where both were pronounced dead. Today, police announcing 25-year-old Vanessa Collius has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, but police said they weren't ready to disclose how the children had died. Over in Etobicoke, what's casually referred to as Ford Nation became a bit more official today. An overwhelming number of city councillors voted in favor of renaming Centennial Stadium after the late mayor Rob Ford. But not everyone was in favor of passing the honour to the controversial Toronto politician. Greg Ross explains why.
The football stadium at Centennial Park will be renamed Rob Ford Stadium. It was made official at City Hall by a large majority of councillors today.
The motion carries. The vote is 17-6.
Among those opposed, Etobicoke Lakeshore councillor Amber Morley. She tabled her own motion asking council to do public consultation before making the change.
If this motion goes forward and the stadium at Centennial Park is renamed without going through this process, we're not providing Torontonians the opportunity to share the impacts, both positive and negative, that this commemoration would have on them.
That motion was ultimately voted down, despite support from councillors like Diane Sachs, who made no bones about her feelings towards the former mayor.
There isn't anyone in this city more divisive than Rob Ford. It's totally inappropriate to do this without public consultation.
Earlier this week, Sachs raised questions about a potential backroom deal between current Mayor Olivia Chow and Rob Ford's brother, Premier Doug Ford, as part of the agreement that will see the province take over funding of the DVP and the Gardiner, an accusation Mayor Chow has denied.
The mayor says there's no link, but if there's no link to the new deal that the province is giving, then there's no rush, and we do have time to comply with our naming policy. If there is a link, it's completely inappropriate.
Despite the handful of councillors opposed, several, like Councillor Mike Cole, stood in support of the motion and the former mayor.
I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, Rob by no means was a perfect human being, but he had a great heart. And again, he really gave his life to local politics, to this place, and to football and young people.
Today on social media, Premier Ford thanked council for honoring his brother's memory. Football was one of Rob Ford's passions. He spent the better part of 11 years as a volunteer coach with Don Bosco High School, a role he continued even while he was mayor. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to something else councillors will soon have to debate. The Toronto Police Service today asking for $20 million more for next year so that it can add 300 more officers. But critics say, if anything, the police budget should be cut. Daniela Ponticelli walks us through that debate.
More money for more officers. Toronto police say that will help answer the call for faster 911 response times. The force wants a 1.7% budget increase next year, bringing the total just shy of $1.2 billion.
We need to ensure that we have the capacity, which is the staffing and the resources, to make sure that when somebody calls 911 here in Toronto, we're able to get there in a timely manner. And by anybody's standards, 22 minutes is not there.
According to Toronto Police, there are 600 fewer officers than in 2010, even though the population has grown by almost 500,000. The requested budget increase would add upwards of 300 officers to improve response times, manage traffic congestion, and add investigative capacity for major crimes.
We don't have to have a lot more police officers paid this extraordinary money and wandering around with guns and body armors and tasers and batons.
The Toronto Police Accountability Coalition has suggestions it says would actually reduce the budget, namely addressing how armed officers are used currently.
You don't need an armed cop to be issuing tickets or directing traffic. That can easily be done by civilians.
The police union says otherwise and has been distributing these flyers to residents, urging people to tell the mayor to invest in police.
Whenever they do something wrong, we need to give them more money. Whenever they do something right, we need to give them more money. When our taxpayers, when our people in the city of Toronto are going to say enough?
2023's budget was a 4.3% increase from the previous year.
Some of the activism from 2020...
Cyrus Marcus Ware is the founder of Black Lives Matter Canada. The group called for police forces to be defunded after the killing of George Floyd in 2020.
What we're seeing is a ramp up of what we call propaganda, which is this, rampant propaganda that says, look, crime is increasing, everything is so bad, we need more money for policing. The reality is that crime numbers are actually going down.
Toronto Police will present its proposed budget to the board for a vote next week. If approved, it then goes on to City Council in the new year. Daniela Ponticelli, CBC News, Toronto.
Good news for parents tonight. Public elementary school teachers in Ontario have voted 90% in favor of a new deal with the province. The 4-year agreement applies to over 80,000 union members, including elementary and occasional teachers. ETVO members had previously voted 95% in favor of a strike before the tentative agreement was announced last month. The deal includes retroactive pay due to Bill 124, which capped wages at 1%. Salary increases will be sent to arbitration. A warm evening for midway through December. 5 degrees right now as we look live at the city. Nick Cernkovich is here with the first check on the forecast. Hey, Nick, the weather certainly had people talking today.
Well, Chris, the story today, of course, the temperatures, not just double digits, but low teens. 13 degrees was our high for today. There's a look at the highs across the region. Toronto, one of the warmest. Now, mind you, not a record. The record for this time of year, or for this day, rather, was 14.4 set back in 1975. But still, nothing to complain about. Lots in the way of sunshine as well. As we move through tonight, cloud cover continuing to roll in across the GTA. Should stay dry for tomorrow, but it is going to be a cloudy day for, well, basically tomorrow and into Sunday as well. Rain showers, though, also moving in for Sunday. So you can see just kind of down in southwestern Ontario Saturday night. By Sunday morning, we've got them poking into the city of Toronto as well. Forecast-wise, in terms of temperatures over the next 24 hours, still staying mild, 3 degrees through the overnight, cloud cover continuing to roll in, 7 for tomorrow and cloudy skies, and then the rain comes. We'll tell you how much and what the rest of the next week looks like coming up in just a bit. Chris.
All right, Nick, we'll talk to you again in just a few minutes. New details tonight about the number of carjackings in Toronto this year. Tonight, we're learning more than half of those arrested for car thefts are young people. According to Toronto Police, of the 54 carjacking arrests this year, 33 were young people. It's a huge proportional increase. Get this, in 2022, of 79 carjacking arrests, 15 were young people. And it's not just an issue in Toronto. Just yesterday in Newmarket, police charged 5 teens between the ages of 14 and 16 in connection with an attempted carjacking. In Brampton, a landlord says he is out at least $30,000 because the tenant at one of his properties has refused to pay rent or move out.
I would like access to my property back. I would like my property back as soon as possible. And secondly, I want them to pay what's due to me, for them to have to pay for the rent that they haven't been paying since May of this year.
The landlord says he's been trying to get the tenant out, but delays at Ontario's Landlord and Tenant Board have left him with mounting debts and emotionally drained. He says the tenant has paid little or no rent since May, leaving him to pay the $9,500 monthly mortgage costs on the property. That is on top of a $7,500 a month mortgage on his own family home. When CBC Toronto attempted to speak with the tenant, he closed the door on our crew. His legal representative has not responded to requests for comment. Returning now with a startling new report about coaches in Ontario. It found far too often they aren't properly trained to instruct young athletes or ensure standardized safety protocols. The report also found a discouraging lack of diversity among Ontario coaches. Patrick Swadden takes a closer look.
Ready? We got 5? Go!
April Deas loves coaching basketball. It's a game she's played since she was young, but she says it's still a bit of a boys' club.
Good one. I find that there's not enough females coaching the game.
Or, she says, a diversity of coaches in the sport.
I myself have never been coached by an Asian presenting or Asian identifying woman. So I hope that one day I could be that person for someone else.
Get up, D! Get up!
And a new report from the Coaches Association of Ontario says she's right. The majority of coaches in Ontario are men, while racialized people are underrepresented. But it's not the only issue highlighted by the report. It says most coaches don't have the standardized training offered to coaches in Canada, which helps handling critical issues like concussion protocols, youth mental health, and athlete development.
I think the national certification program in Canada is actually extremely vital to progressing coaching across the country.
We saw in the survey results that those that are trained and certified feel more confident dealing with some of the more challenging parts of coaching.
All right, ready? Let's go!
The survey questioned 1,000 coaches across 80 sports, finding only 42% had any of that training. The association's executive director, Jeremy Cross, saying it's challenging because over 3/4 of coaches are unpaid volunteers.
Training takes time, capacity, and money. So we have to be very careful in how much training we're putting in front of these people when we're onboarding them. So making sure that we're doing it in bite-sized bits.
But he says training for coaches is nevertheless crucial and can help with athlete success and safety. He says it should be mandatory, but that would mean sporting bodies stepping up to the plate.
We need to make sure that we're supporting coaches through things like bursary programs to make sure that we're offsetting costs for them to take that basic training.
Meanwhile, the association is working to get more women involved in coaching mentorships.
I think it's really important to be able to see role models in that space.
Day is saying when more and more young athletes see themselves reflected in their coaches, it helps them stick with the sport. Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
We've been talking about this next story for weeks. Recent stats showing a sharp increase in food bank visits this past year. Places like the Daily Bread Food Bank are trying to keep up with demand while offering its users the option to choose items based on their needs. Metro Morning host David Common took a trip to the food bank's Etobicoke location.
Trevor, good to meet you.
Good to meet you, David.
Tell me about what happens here at the Daily Bread Food Bank.
So we've got two parts of the Daily Bread Food Bank. We've got the big warehouse where everything's sorted and we send food out to agencies, but then we've got our own food bank on site. I'm part of that team that runs the New Toronto Street Food Bank, where we actually serve clients directly, and we serve about, I would say, 100 to 300 families per day. We're open 7 days a week. We have two programs. One is a choose your own food program, which is what the food bank today is set up as.
As you and I speak in the place that people will come in and do their shopping, there are families just waiting right on the other side of this wall. Yes. We talk about how 1 in 10 people in the Toronto area is now relying on a food bank just for their well-being. Do you see that in a more tangible sense here?
Absolutely. We serve people every day. We get to hear their stories. We get to share the struggles that they're going through as they're coming and getting food.
So you are both a volunteer here at Daily Bread,
yes,
but also a client.
Yes, please.
And you're a family of? One. So when you come in the door here as a client, they give you this points ticket. And what does this mean?
These are points for each food category. For example, if a client of one, as I am, I have 4 points for fruits and vegetables. I have 3 points for proteins, 2 points for grains, and 1 for other.
Shall we shop?
So if I'm selecting, since 2 for 1 for the peanut butter, that means I can take 2 tins. I like peanut butter, so I can take 2 tins of peanut butter.
Okay, so we'll
and
take 2.
And this is 1 point off.
We put them in the cart.
Yes,
yeah.
So I have 2 points of proteins left.
And so there are some products that are free.
Yeah.
And how does that happen? Do you know?
Yeah, so in case we have a lot of that particular produce, yes, instead of keeping it to its maybe expiry or something like that, we can put it out free for clients to get more of it.
The thing that I'm seeing here is if you can come once a week, this is all the food.
Yes, that's all the food.
That either feeds you or supplements what you've got.
Yes, please. Yes. And this is quite okay for some clients that we've interacted with. This is quite enough because you'll find a client and you tell them, you can go and pick some more veggies. You have 2 points left, and they'll say, no, I still have carrots from last week. I still have some of this from last week, so I don't need that.
I am struck by the model that you have here, that this is not, there are times in the week where you hand over a box to people, but there is something dignified about the process of coming in here and actually shopping for the things you want, not just the things you're going to get.
Well, we've tried to emulate a grocery store as much as possible because that's the experience that people are familiar with. And so that really, it means that we don't have to do a lot of explaining about how this works. People are able to dive right in and start interacting with the food, the products, checking the labels, that sort of thing, making informed choices. And that is a great way of reducing the stigma around accessing a food program.
So some rain, you told us, is coming our way Sunday. Nick, what else is in store for our long-range forecast?
Well, Chris, of course, we talked about the temperatures earlier on hitting 13 degrees. They aren't going to stick around, unfortunately, but still some mild weather in the forecast. Here's how the weather headlines break down. So clouds rolling in through the overnight period. Sunday showers, mind you, still mild in terms of averages for this time of year. And then a bit of a cool down closer to seasonal as we head into next week. Here's a look at your forecast through the next couple of days. We've got cloudy skies tomorrow. It should generally stay dry. Maybe a few rain showers just up to the north. Around Lake Huron, Georgian Bay, but generally it's going to be just cloud cover for everybody. Sunday, though, things start to change. Rainfall moves in Saturday night for Windsor, and then by Sunday morning, we're looking at that moving into the Golden Horseshoe. That pretty much lasts for the better part of Sunday, and then tapers off as we move into Monday morning with a few sprinkles still on Monday. How much can you expect with this? Generally speaking, we're looking at about 10 to 15 millimeters of rain for most places. Eastern Ontario picking up quite a bit more, but for most places in South Central and Southwestern Ontario, about 10 to 15 millimeters of rain in the forecast. Winds, a little gusty today, up to about 40 kilometers per hour, sort of easing off into tomorrow morning, and then they're going to pick up again Saturday afternoon into Sunday night. Winds out of the east, though, in this case here, as the system starts to push across. We'll see gusts around the 40 kilometer per hour mark, although some areas might see winds a little bit stronger than that, especially along the shorelines with this easterly wind. Overnight temperatures tonight, mild, 4 degrees for the city of Toronto, 3 in some places. It kind of depends on where you are, but this is 4 for downtown Toronto. The average for this time of year, -6, so well above that. And then tomorrow, still above average temperature, 7 degrees and cloud cover. The average daytime high for this time of year, +1. 6 on Sunday with showers, starts to cool off on Monday, tapering showers, and then closer to seasonal as we head into mid next week. Chris.
Not too bad. All right. Thank you, Nick, and have a great weekend. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back with you on Monday night, and we'll leave you now with a look at Mayor Olivia Chow and Councillor Lily Cheng performing as Cannon Dolls in the Nutcracker tonight. Looks like they got right into it. That's our show. Have a great night, and we'll see you on Monday.